How does shared ownership work? That's what one of my clients asked me today. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to teach you all about how shared ownership works, how to get a mortgage for it, what staircasing means, and everything else that incorporates. So who am I? My name's Manda, and I am the finance coach and mortgage advisor, the mortgage coach. And I help hundreds of people get on the property ladder, be it for right to buy, help to buy when it existed, shared ownership, straight first time buyers. I also help with financial coaching, improving your credit and saving up for a deposit and all that good stuff. But today's video is going to be about shared ownership, and by the end of it you're going to understand how it all is, so please stick around. Now, the first thing is, what is shared ownership? Now, shared ownership is when you have a combination of rent and a mortgage. So, for example, if you went and you applied at the shared ownership scheme in order to get a shared ownership property, they would work out your affordability. Now, this needs to include how much the rent is going to be. So they'll look at your affordability, and for example, they may say, okay, you can afford to purchase 60% and then 40% of it will be rented. So then you'll go and you'll apply for the 60% mortgage amount. Now, you can also put a deposit on this as well, and the way you decide that is basically how much you can afford. Now, the next step is to apply for the mortgage. Once you've applied for the mortgage and you've got that mortgage, and you've got the mortgage offer, the solicitor has been involved, they've actually, you've gone for exchange, you've gone through a completion, and you actually own 60% of that property. Every month you're going to have to pay rent on 40% of it, and that's how it works. But what is staircasing? Now, there's two variations of staircasing. So say, for example, you bought a property and you had a mortgage that was a 2-year fixed. So that deal was for 2 years. If you get a pay rise or you come into some money and you think that you own 60% in this example, in 2 years' time, you've managed to save up that 40%, or you've got an inheritance or for some other thing, then you can actually remortgage after 2 years and basically pay off that other 40% either in cash, or you can remortgage if you've got the affordability. So if your salary's gone up and you can now afford to have a mortgage that's the 100% rather than the 60%, then you can go for that, obviously minus whatever your deposit was. So that is what is called just completely remortgaging out of the shared ownership. The other option is, which is more likely, is staircasing. Now, what I tend to do is get someone, especially when the rates were really, really low, what I got my clients to do is get a 5-year fixed that allowed you to do additional borrowing. Now, how it actually worked was, what you did was you applied again for the 60% mortgage and then the 40% rental. And then what happened was, a year or 2 years down the line, you apply to the same lender for additional borrowing and you actually buy more. So say you're 2 years into a 5-year deal and you can actually afford a mortgage that is no longer 60% but 80%. So you staircase up, so you buy an extra 20%. Now, some will allow you to buy 5%, 10%, 20%. You have to check with the landlords of that shared ownership scheme. But as I said, what I tend to do is ask people how much do they think they're going to afford, how much is their salary going to increase over the next 5 years, and then every year or every other year they mortgage, get additional borrowing to add to their mortgage a little bit more. So for example, where they started off at the 60, maybe 2 years in they go to the 80, maybe 4 years in they go to the 95. That's the exception to the rule. They're not allowed to go all the way up to the 100 because it's no longer shared ownership, is it? You've mortgaged 100% rather than 95. So you can go right up to 95 with the staircasing. So you could have a 5-year fixed and stay with the same lender, just borrowing more as your salary increases, as your affordability increases. Or a second option is you could have that 2-year fixed, and then when you go to remortgage for the 2-year, you just borrow more and you actually increase the borrowing that way. So you remortgage, you pay off your existing mortgage, and you actually borrow more. So it all is included. With the first option where you're staircasing, maybe paying, borrowing an extra 10-20% in order to make it 80, it will on your account look like 2 mortgages. So you have the original mortgage of 60 with one account number, and then it will have to be with the exact same lender. You'll have 20%, for example, if you can afford it, with a different account number. It's the same when you're borrowing money if you wanted to, do home improvements or something like that. When you do additional borrowing, you can do additional borrowing for several different things, but you need to check if the lender will allow you to staircase. The other thing you need to check, and this is something I said to my client, is check that the shared ownership scheme that you've got allows you to staircase up to 90%, 95%, and does it let you buy them out completely? Read the small print or get your solicitor to, or your mortgage advisor, because that is really important, because you may have the idea to staircase, but then unfortunately there may be a clause that says you can never own more than 85% or 95%, which means that you will always be paying them rent. So that's another thing. If you found this really useful and you're enjoying the video, please share, subscribe, and hit that like button, because that's how I get out to other people and more people know about this. As I say to all my clients, unfortunately there's not enough information out there, which is why I do this channel. So if you can share with others, if you can think of anyone. I did a video yesterday about right to buy. Today it's about shared ownership. So I'm trying to do affordability